Chapter 160. Give it to you? Just because you are the young Master Emerald? Since his opponent had already tried to kill him, Yi-chan would not show any mercy. A cold light flashed through Zhuang Fei's eyes. A couple of months ago, he did not take this guy seriously at all. But now that he had gained some power, he had become more and more arrogant. However, he was a bit surprised that his powerful palm attack did not hit him. Give me the manual and I won't make things difficult for you, Zhuang Fei said indifferently as he secretly accumulated his true qi and prepared himself for a thunderous strike. You want the manual? Maybe you don't have it. Right then, Yi-chan had already landed on the platform. He shook his iron spear, and the tip of the spear, which contained the sword intent, easily broke the light ball open, and the manual was sucked into his hand. Seeing this, Zhuang Fei's killing intent was immediately revealed. Yi-chan did not care about him, he just stood on the platform. He opened the first page of the manual. The Mysterious Great Art, a mid-rank Earth-realm martial art, divided into 11 levels. The first 2 levels are the foundation and the third level is the palace. After that, with each level up, your Zhen Qi will be condensed by 30%. Once you reach the 11th level, you will be able to condense a mouthful of Supreme Zhen Yuan, which can easily kill your enemies. Condense a mouthful of Supreme Zhen Yuan at the highest level? Reading this, Yi-chan was sure that the Mysterious Great Art was the martial art that he needed, and it was even more powerful than he had expected. Now, not to mention the young Master Emerald Zhuang Fei, even if a late-clasping Yuan realm martial artist came, he would still kill him. Zhen Yuan could only be cultivated by astral-reaching realm martial artists. Before reaching the astral-reaching realm, all the martial artists cultivated Zhen Qi. The two were only one word apart, but the power was completely different. If one could condense a mouthful of Zhen Yuan before reaching the astral-reaching realm, it would definitely be the ace of all ace attacks. No clasping Yuan realm martial artist would be able to block it, and would definitely be killed. Putting away the Mysterious Great Art manual, Yi-chan was satisfied and was about to leave. Since you don't want to give me the manual, don't blame me for being cruel. Dodging the gushing earth fire one by one, Zhuang Fei arrived at the bottom of the platform. In the blink of an eye, he flipped himself over and stood on the platform. Yi-chan stood in place without moving. The room was full of traps, and it was impossible for him to leave quickly. Instead of doing something useless, he might as well wait here. He wanted to see how the other party was going to make him stay. You used to be the most powerful young warrior of the Windy Nation, but you're definitely not anymore. Let me shatter your glory. Without a sword in his hand, Yi-chan did not mind at all. With his sword intent and iron spear that were almost at the entry level, he could use about 80% of his power at his peak, which was more than enough to defeat Zhuang Fei. As for the reason why Zhuang Fei was so confident, it was probably because he did not expect that Yi-chan could still improve his sword intent. You're courting death. Heavenly Emerald Palm. Zhuang Fei's body didn't move as he struck out with his palm. Soundlessly, the emerald green Zhen Qi hand shot out, aiming straight for Yi-chan's face. Break. Yi-chan sneered. Like a poisonous snake, the iron spear pierced into the weak spot of the Zhen Qi giant hand. Pop! The Zhen Qi giant hand disappeared into thin air. Another weak spot attack. Before, when his palm attack was broken, Zhuang Fei had already sensed something. Now, he was sure that Yi-chan had mastered a martial art that allowed him to discover weak spots. Now let's see how you're going to break this. Green Shadow Light. Zhuang Fei yelled out while he threw out a series of attacks with both of his hands. Streams of emerald green Zhen Qi giant hands attacked towards Yi-chan like green shadows. Their trajectories were unpredictable, and they would automatically adjust themselves in the middle of the attack. No matter how powerful you are, I can still break it. Yi-chan used his spear as a sword. He shook the tip of the spear and launched the Sky Cloud Sword Art, which had the widest range of attack. The crimson spear light shot straight up, crazily twisting the airflow. Using the power of rotation, it formed a giant tornado. What was surprising was that this tornado contained fire origin energy, and its color was gradually dyed crimson, bringing with it a blazing heat as it swept out. Within a moment, those emerald green Zhen Qi giant hands were all broken, and the tornado, which had shrunk a little bit, was still roaring towards Zhuang Fei. While the two were fighting, the scorching ancient desert was not peaceful at all. After Lung Wuqing and Wuxia were sent out of the desert, all the people from the top martial institutions started discussing with each other. As for the multiple mountain martial schools elders, their faces were all darkened. They were sure that it was almost impossible for Hong Qianjun to still be alive. Who killed Hong Qianjun? Is it a powerful hidden dragon-ranked martial artist? No matter who killed Hong Qianjun, once we find out who it is, we will kill him without mercy. The multiple mountain martial schools elder didn't lower his voice on purpose. Therefore, his words were clearly heard by all the other martial institutions. I can't believe that Hong Qianjun, ranked 69th in the hidden dragon ranked, has fallen. He was an early clasping Yuan realm martial artist. He was powerful enough to rival ordinary mid-clasping Yuan realm martial artists. To be honest, I really want to know who killed him. I think it was 80% likely that it was a powerful hidden dragon ranked martial artist. Only they are powerful enough to kill him. The 3 ranked in the top 60 are the most likely suspects. Who are you? Wuxia, Xue Hen and Yuan Henging. Indeed, think about it, except for them, who else could kill Hong Qianjun? Even if the other hidden dragon ranked martial artists were slightly more powerful, they might not be able to do it. On the Sky Cloud Martial School's side, Lu Hanzhan let out a long breath and said, Wuxia and Lung Wuqing have come out. Now only Brother Yi, Zhuang Fei and Yuan Henging are left in the Heavenly Dream Battle Palace. What took them so long? Is it that hard to break into the clasping Yuan realm? Zhu Mei and Su Jing were also confused. The head elder suddenly thought of something and said, Did they pass all the tests and start to fight for the 3 treasures? Zhu Mei was shocked and said, Passed all the tests? I remember that no one has done it for the past 100 years. Indeed, no one has done it for the past 100 years, but during the past 100 years, the current generation of young martial artists are the most talented ones. Therefore, it's not impossible for them to pass all the tests. Otherwise, they wouldn't have spent so much time, they should have come out long ago. The 4th elder said. Lu Hanzhan nodded and asked, Passing all the tests is extremely difficult. The 3 treasures in the Heavenly Dream Battle Palace must be very precious, right? The head elder said, Of course it's precious. The most powerful martial art of our Sky Cloud Martial School is the Great Rudra Divine Art, which was obtained by the 3rd generation leader of our Sky Cloud Martial School, in the Heavenly Dream Ancient region over 100 years ago. No one except the leader or the leader's successor is qualified to learn it. The Great Rudra Divine Art was obtained from the Heavenly Dream Ancient region? This was the first time for Lu Hanzhan to hear about this. As for the power of the Great Rudra Divine Art, he had already witnessed it. With the help of his Zhan Qi, the Great Rudra Divine Art could evaporate a river without leaving a trace. A few Purple Sun Martial School elders kept glancing at the people from the Sky Cloud Martial School. Seeing their strange expressions, they couldn't help but guess. That swordsman from the Sky Cloud Martial School hasn't come out yet. Did he die in there? I'm afraid it's not that simple. I've never heard that the Heavenly Dream Battle Palace would kill people on their own initiative. Therefore, he was either sent out or stayed in there. But he hasn't come out yet, the answer is obvious. What I'm most worried about is that he has passed all the tests. If he has passed all the tests, the Heavenly Dream Battle Palace will open 3 treasures. These 3 treasures are invaluable. If he gets them, he might harm our Purple Sun Martial School. After all, the treasures that come out of the Heavenly Dream Battle Palace are the best of the best. They are even more precious than the same level treasures in the outside world. If it's a treasure, that's fine, but if it's a mid-rank Earth Realm martial art, it would definitely be a top-grade martial art of the Purple Sun Martial School, which is even more powerful than ordinary mid-rank Earth Realm martial arts. The face of the head elder of the Purple Sun Martial School turned darker and darker. This kid hasn't grown up yet, but he has already made us feel so uneasy. If we don't kill him, the Purple Sun Martial School will face a great disaster sooner or later. It seems that we have to send all the leaders of the hunting hall out, to make sure that we can kill him with a single strike. Indeed, Zhu Liang is already too weak. I'm afraid that he can't rival that kid. Inside the Heavenly Dream Battle Palace, Zhuang Fei was shocked. He didn't think that Yi Chan could still be so powerful after losing his sword. How is this possible? Is his sword intent really that powerful? Seeing the blood-red tornado roaring towards him along with beams of spear light, Zhuang Fei's intent of killing grew even stronger. He sensed a great threat from Yi Chan. which made him feel quite uncomfortable. Break. Zhan Qi swooshed up into the air, a silhouette of a mountain shrouded Zhuang Fei up. He remained motionless like a mountain, while his palms let out streams of river-like streams of power. Those streams of power were incomparably powerful, and even the airflow above the platform was punctured and exploded. What kind of martial art is this? Mountain water, could it be the great art of mountain and water? Yichun had heard from the head elder that the first leader of the Emerald Martial Palace had found a broken piece of the great art of mountain and water in the Mountain and Water Pavilion. The great art of mountain and water was a high-rank Earth-realm martial art, and even though it was just a broken piece, it was still a mid-rank Earth-realm martial art. Its power was not hard to imagine, it was definitely horrifying, even more powerful than the great Rudra magic art of the Sky Cloud Martial School. The crimson tornado was dispersed, and the torrential palm energy rushed forward with an indomitable will. Yichun laughed out loud, he didn't seem to care about it. Unstable cloud. Limitless cloud. Sword of impermanence. Sword of mist. Using the spear as a sword, Yichun didn't step back, instead he moved forward. While shaking the spear, he launched the sword movements of the shocking cloud sword art. Stimulated by his sword intent, countless spear lights were shot out. Not only did they cut open the torrential stream of palm power, they also hit on the silhouette of the mountain outside of Zhuang Fei's body. The silhouette of the mountain was shattered. Under the attack of Yi Chen's sword intent, Zhuang Fei's great art of mountain and water didn't work. After all, he had only reached the 8th level of the great art of mountain and water, which meant that he couldn't release the most powerful power of the great art of mountain and water. Moreover, before this, Yi Chen had broken Hong Qianjuan's great art of mountain and water, although it was extremely difficult for him to break it. Puff! Spurting out a mouthful of blood, Zhuang Fei yelled out, "Yuan Hinging, I know you're outside. Do you want to see us both get hurt?" Haha! Along with a creepy laughter, Yuan Hinging showed up in the room and said, "Zhuang Fei, I don't think you're qualified to fight against this little bastard. I'm afraid you can't stop him either." Zhuang Fei boosted up his Zhan Qi and condensed the silhouette of the mountain again, temporarily stopping Yi Chen. Yi Chen's eyes were filled with killing intent. He had already found out that Yuan Henging was outside, but he pretended that he didn't know, because he wanted to kill Zhuang Fei first. Yuan Henging paused slightly. To be honest, he wasn't sure that he could stop Yi Chen. After he reached the clasping Yuan realm, Yi Chen's power was even more terrifying than his own. He was definitely a freak. However, the more powerful he was, the more he wanted to kill Yi Chen. He couldn't let him keep improving. "What do you mean? You and I will fight together." Yuan Henging tried to test Zhuang Fei. Zhuang Fei said coldly, "Those who want to achieve great things don't care about trifles." Chapter 161. What a good don't bother with trifles. But I really want to know, how should we divide the martial arts manuals? You and I will each take half and we will keep the other half in our minds. What do you think? Alright, it's a deal. Yuan Hengying's body kept flashing, avoiding the ground fire. Zhanqi eagles shot out of his body one after another, flying towards Yi Chen, who was on the platform. Seeing this, Zhuang Fei knew that Yuan Hengying had agreed, so he did not dare to hesitate. He pushed the Zhanqi in his meridians to its limit, making the silhouette of the mountain even more condensed and crystal-like. He then threw out streams of palm power that looked like rivers, which merged with the Zhanqi eagles and attacked fiercely. Today you two have to leave something behind before you leave. Yi Chen did not back out. Instead, a sharp qi shot up into the sky, like a great sword that was about to be pulled out of its sheath and start a bloody massacre. Break. Driven by the powerful sword intent, the red flame on the iron spear suddenly extended out. It compressed and lengthened, eventually turning into a scorching red fire sword. The fire sword let out a long roar, and heavily hacked on the weak spot between the Zhanqi eagles and the palm power. Swoosh! A cloth-tearing sound was heard. The red fire sword was so powerful that it broke the combined attack of Yuan Henging and Zhuang Fei with only one sword attack. Yuan Henging, who had just stood on the platform, suddenly changed his expression. Yi Chen was even more powerful than he had expected. Using a spear as a sword, he was still able to block the combined attack of the two of them. If he had a low-rank great sword, he would not even need to fight anymore. Fortunately, a spear was a spear, it could never become a sword. Zhuang Fei, you don't have to hide anymore. If we don't use our final trump card, it's absolutely impossible to kill him. Our lives might even be in danger. While speaking, Yuan Henging slightly spread his feet, and a dark cyan-colored zhanqi burst out, forming a pair of gigantic eagle claws on both sides of his body. This pair of eagle claws was cyan with a hint of black, releasing an ancient evil power, which was extremely shocking. Flooding mountains. Hearing this, the shadow of the mountain outside of Zhuang Fei's body suddenly collapsed, turning into a torrential flood. The flood formed a spiral shape, surging around Zhuang Fei. Its momentum was astonishing, as if it would pounce out at any time and drown everything in its sight. It turned out that the mountain and water great art could not only be used for both offense and defense, but it could also be turned into a full offense or a full defense. The full offense was the flooding the mountain, which could turn the power of the mountain into a torrent of water and attack the enemy. However, although the full offense was powerful, its defense was quite weak. It was not much more powerful than a normal early clasping yuan realm martial artist, and could easily be hit by unexpected attacks. As for the full defense, Zhuang Fei had not mastered it yet. He would need to reach the 9th level of the mountain and water great art to be able to do it. Otherwise, his defense would not have been broken by Yi Qian with only one spear attack. Rumble. The two of them did not hold back in the slightest and immediately blasted out their strongest attacks. A gigantic eagle claw tore through the air, bringing with it a demonic aura as it grabbed towards Yi Qian. Then, a torrential palm energy surged forth, even more powerful than before. Bang 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 bang. The iron spear held in Yi Qian's hand was 2 and 3 meters long. Added with the red flame sword, it was 4 meters long. As Yi Qian waved his arm, the red flame sword turned into countless afterimages, hacking on the gigantic eagle claw and the powerful palm energy, bringing up thousands of fire sparks. After a while, Yi Qian abruptly shook off the eagle claw with one spear attack. The red flame sword on the iron spear fell off and darted towards Zhuang Fei like a shooting star. Damn it! Zhuang Fei was enraged. This was the moment when his defense was at its weakest. Once he was hit, he would die for sure. Without any time to think, he hurriedly threw out 2 streams of powerful palm energy towards the flame sword. Pop! Pop! The palm energy was pierced through one after another, and the flame sword was shattered as well. It turned into a fierce wave of fire that swallowed Zhuang Fei, burning him. Yuan Henging seized the opportunity when Yi Qian was fighting against Zhuang Fei, and was about to launch a fierce attack. Suddenly, an explosive power came from under his feet, which nearly sent him flying. Fortunately, he had already activated all of his zhanqi, which allowed him to stomp on the ground and extinguish the explosive power. That was close. Yuan Henging still had a lingering fear. Indeed, the explosive power couldn't hurt him, but it could push him off the platform. However, the platform was full of traps. If he was slightly careless, he would be burned by the ground fire or killed, or teleported out of the heavenly dream battle palace. He didn't want to see either of these two things. Yi Qian also felt that it was a pity. The earth explosion that he had obtained from the Bloody Butcher was at a low level. It was a great help to him in the early stages, but now it could only barely help him, and couldn't do anything to Yuan Henging, who was protected by an earth realm martial art. Puff! The flame was torn apart, and Zhuang Fei walked out from it. Except for looking a bit embarrassed, he didn't seem to be injured at all. However, by now the two of them were more and more shocked. Yi Qian was unbelievably powerful. He was fighting against 2 people at the same time, but he still had the upper hand. If it weren't for the fact that both of them had their own special skills, it would be hard for them to hold on. However, it was almost impossible for them to defeat Yi Qian with this kind of power. At this moment, Yi Qian's feet didn't leave the ground, and he launched the last movement of the Shocking Cloud sword art. Supreme Shocking Cloud. Holding the iron spear in his right hand, Yi Qian swung it straight down, silently and lightly, without even a trace of smoke or flame, as if he was brushing away the clouds with his bare hands. Pa! Thunder boomed. This spear seemed to be light, yet it released an extremely terrifying power. It was like a thunderbolt striking down on a sunny day, which made people feel like they were fighting against each other. Zhuang Fei and Yuan Henging didn't even have the chance to dodge before they were hit by the red spear light. Their protective zhanqi was shattered instantly, and they both puked out a mouthful of blood and were sent flying towards the platform. The pure white earth flame burst out, and the two of them disappeared instantly. On the platform, Yichun shook his head. It turned out that this earth flame couldn't kill people, it could only send people out. However, it was not the right time to kill the two of them. The current Sky Cloud Martial School couldn't afford to take this responsibility. After all, the Sky Eagle Castle Martial School and the Emerald Martial Palace were both rank 7 martial institutions, and were extremely powerful. Now that their top disciple had been killed, the leaders of the martial school would definitely not let it go. The light door in the cyan light opened again, and 2 human silhouettes flew out. Yuan Hengying, Zhuang Fei, the elders of the Sky Eagle Castle Martial School, and the Emerald Martial Palace Martial School both yelled out. However, when they saw the wounds on the two of them, and the large amount of blood coming out of their mouths and noses, they couldn't help but be stunned. Yuan Hengying, what happened? Who hurt you? The head elder of the Sky Eagle Castle Martial School asked with a gloomy face. Head elder, let's talk when we get back. Yuan Hengying didn't want to tell the truth in front of everyone. It would be too embarrassing. 2 hidden dragon rank martial artists had been beaten by a young martial artist to the point of vomiting blood, and had almost died. No matter what, it was not a glorious thing, and it would greatly affect his reputation. On the other side, Zhuang Fei didn't want to talk about it either. On the Evil Blood Martial School's side, Wuxia was shocked. Yuan Hengying's power was not weaker than his, and Zhuang Fei was also a hidden dragon rank martial artist. How could they be wounded so badly? Could it be that they had fought against each other, and both of them were badly wounded? This was the most reasonable explanation. I wonder who has the rest of the treasures. Wuxia was a bit regretful. If he had known that there were only these 2 people, he might have tried to get the other 2 treasures, even if it was just one. The light door opened again, and another human silhouette flew out. Who? Who else is in there? All the young hidden dragon rank martial artists should have come out by now. Could it be that he is the real culprit who injured Yuan Hengying and Zhuang Fei? All the elders from the top martial institutions started discussing, while the multiple mountain martial schools' elders popped their eyes out. They all hoped that it was Hong Qianjun who had gone missing. People from the Sky Cloud Martial School were clearly aware that the last person was definitely Yichun. As for Hong Qianjun, he had been killed by Yichun long ago, and there was no such person anymore. Shoo! The silhouette stood on the sand, wearing a moon-white long robe. The unique cloud pattern of the Sky Cloud Martial School was embroidered on the sleeves. A disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School. Except for a small number of people, the others were all confused. They had all kinds of guesses, but none of them had ever thought that it would be a nameless disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School. Before this, none of them had ever heard of this person. No. He was the last one to come out, which meant that he had passed all the tests, participated in the competition for the 3 treasures, and came out unscathed. In that case, was Yuan Hengying and Zhuang Fei injured by this person? It shouldn't be possible. Some elders shook their heads. They didn't believe that the 2 young hidden dragon ranked martial artists could be injured by this person, not even if they were beaten to death. A cold beam of light flashed across the multiple mountain martial school's head elder's eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. Brother Yi, you're out. Lu Hanshan let out a sigh of relief. The competition for the 3 treasures was different than before. He didn't need to fight against the rest of the people. He was truly afraid that Yichun might have died in there. Yichun nodded, flashed across the air and arrived at the Sky Cloud Martial School's area. The head elder glanced at Yichun, smiled and said, "Are you alright?" Yichun glanced at Zhuang Fei and Yuan Hengying and said, "I'm alright, I got out unscathed." "Good, that's good." "Oh right, did you hurt Zhuang Fei and Yuan Hengying?" In fact, the head elder didn't really believe Yichun's words, but it was better for him to ask. Hesitating for a while, Yichun nodded again. "They were really hurt by you?" The other Sky Cloud Martial School's inner elders gasped in shock. Luo Hanshan laughed and said, "Brother Yi, you've stepped into the clasping Yuan realm. Your power has improved tremendously. In a one-on-one fight, it wouldn't be surprising for you to injure Zhuang Fei and Yuan Hengying, but it would be strange if you couldn't beat them." He thought that Yichun had beaten Zhuang Fei and Yuan Hengying respectively. He didn't really believe it. He thought that the elders were making a fuss about nothing. The head elder was slightly surprised, but soon calmed himself down. He realized that Yi-chan had already attained the sword intent, and had also stepped into the clasping yuan realm. His power had definitely improved by leaps and bounds. It wouldn't be a big deal for him to beat the last hidden dragon ranked martial artists. Without any accidents, Yi-chan would definitely have a place in the next hidden dragon rank competition in a year and a half, and no one would be able to stop him. "Huh, kid, have you seen the top-ranked disciple of our multiple mountain martial school, Hong Qianjun?" At this moment, a voice came from the multiple mountain martial school's head elder. Seeing that Yi-chan was the last one to come out, he immediately became suspicious. He felt that Yi-chan was the biggest suspect. He immediately walked towards Yi-chan step by step, while releasing a strong sense of power. Luo Hanshan's facial expression changed. Chapter 162. Yi-chan had activated his sword intent, so he wasn't affected by the pressure released from the multiple mountain martial school's power. He responded calmly, "I don't know him." "Nonsense. Our multiple mountain martial school's top-ranked disciple, Hong Qianjun, is a young hidden dragon-ranked martial artist. How could you not know him? Did you sneakily attack him and kill him?" "Head elder, no need to say more. Let's take him back to the multiple mountain martial school. Indeed, I don't believe that he can still talk like this under the torture. Cripple this kid first." The multiple mountain martial school's elders were all filled with killing intent. Even if Yi-chan wasn't the murderer, they still wouldn't let him go. "Since when did you multiple mountain martial school have the right to bully our Sky Cloud martial school's disciples?" A strong sense of power rose from the air, along with which, the Sky Cloud martial school's head elder slowly walked out. Although his pair of wrinkled eyes were slightly blurry, they were still as sharp as steel needles. Hearing the head elder, an inner elder of the multiple mountain martial school said scornfully, "What is your Sky Cloud martial school's status?" "What is our multiple mountain martial school's status?" "Now your Sky Cloud martial school's disciple is suspected of killing our top-ranked disciple, so we have to take him back. No one can stop us. I advise you'd better cooperate with us. Don't bring trouble to our Sky Cloud martial school, or you'll regret it." The Sky Cloud martial school's fourth elder and the head elder stood side by side, with their eyes popped out in anger. "What a joke. If you take Yi-chan away today, our Sky Cloud martial school's reputation would be ruined. Don't even think about it. Whoever dares to touch him will kill him." The multiple mountain martial school's head elder snorted coldly while releasing a great sense of power, which even caused the desert surface to sink. "You? Kill you as easy as killing a dog. Kid, come over." Swoosh. After saying that, he waved his hand and released a terrifying suction force. The sand around Yi-chan was sucked into the suction force, while Yi-chan felt weightless and couldn't control his own body anymore. Cut! A fiery red sword condensed on the iron spear and hacked at the air in front of Yi-chan along with an unstoppable sword intent, cutting off the suction force. The multiple mountain martial school's head elder knitted his eyebrows, pulled his right hand back and released the suction force again. This time, the suction force was twice as strong as before, and even the 10-meter deep sand was rolled up. "You're going too far. Freeze." The head elder of the Sky Cloud martial school was furious. He took a step forward and released his Zhanqi, locking onto the space where Yi-chan was. No matter how strong the suction force was, it was impossible for him to move. "You're courting death." A khaki-colored gigantic palm made of Zhanqi suddenly darted out, smashing towards the Sky Cloud martial school's head elder. Wherever it passed by, the sand surface would be blasted out layer by layer, and huge tens of meters thick and tens of meters tall sand pillars would rise into the air. The multiple mountain martial school's head elder was the first one to launch the attack. He had cast the same mountain-shattering stamp as Hong Qianjun had cast. However, in his hands, this mountain-collapsing seal was many times more powerful than Hong Qianjun's. With a single palm strike, it was powerful enough to shatter mountains and crack the earth. Purple light cave heaven. The great elder's clothes fluttered even though there was no wind. He slightly lowered his center of gravity and pointed out a finger that seemed slow but was actually fast. Poochie! The purple ray of light condensed and pierced through the huge palm made of khaki-colored Zhanqi, making a sizzling sound. "Look, the multiple mountain martial school and the Sky Cloud martial school are fighting." The Multiple Mountain Martial School is so arrogant. They haven't even proved that it was the Sky Cloud Martial School's disciple who killed Hong Qianjun. Yet they want to take him back. Clearly, they don't take the Sky Cloud Martial School seriously. Exactly. They've already taken him back. Even if he doesn't die, he'll still have to be tortured to make a confession. The Multiple Mountain Martial School is a rank 7 martial institution from the White Mystery Nation, a mid-tier country. They are very powerful and have always been arrogant. The Sky Cloud Martial School can only blame their bad luck for offending them. I think the Sky Cloud Martial School is going to fail this time. A peerless genius emerged from a rank 9 martial institution. It's inevitable that people will be jealous of him. The Multiple Mountain Martial School might have the same thought. To be honest, even I am jealous of him. That move he launched just now, which cut off the suction force, clearly contained the sword intent. That's why he was able to pass all the tests of the Heavenly Dream Battle Palace and compete for the 3 treasures. The other elders were either angry or scared, but most of them were jealous. Why didn't their martial institutions have a peerless genius who had comprehended the sword intent? Move. Kill. How dare you go against our Multiple Mountain Martial School? This time, the Multiple Mountain Martial School had sent 11 inner elders and 10s of outer elders, all of whom were above the mid-class Bing Yuan realm. Seeing the head elder and the Sky Cloud Martial School's head elder, they couldn't hold back their killing intent and rushed out. Everyone from the Sky Cloud Martial School, kill! The 4th elder roared out while a raging flame rose from his body, scorching the sand and turning it into black crystals. 4th elder, take this spear. Yi Chen's blood was boiling inside his body, but his mind was still clear. No matter in terms of overall power or individual power, the Multiple Mountain Martial School's head elder was more powerful than him. Fortunately, although the Sky Cloud Martial School was a rank 9 martial institution, it was as powerful as a rank 8 martial institution. Compared to the Multiple Mountain Martial School, which was a rank 7 martial institution, the Sky Cloud Martial School wouldn't be a pushover. Yi Chan knew that the 4th elder was a cultivator of fire Zhanqi, and the low-rank spear was perfect for him. Without thinking, he threw the spear towards the 4th elder. Low-ranked spear? The 4th elder caught the spear with one hand and immediately sensed the great firepower contained in the spear. He couldn't help but laugh out loud. There were many treasures in this world, but unfortunately, there were even more martial artists. Not every class Bing Yuan realm martial artist had a good treasure, and the 4th elder was one of them. Now that he had a low-rank spear in his hand, he wouldn't even be afraid of peak-level late-class Bing Yuan realm martial artists. Boom! The spear swung horizontally, releasing a scorching red flame that transformed into a sky-devouring wave of fire. It immediately pushed back the 2 Multiple Mountain Martial School's inner elders, who had been rushing towards him. 7th elder, 9th elder, the short blade and the dagger are for you. The 7th elder and the 9th elder were experts in using blades and assassinations respectively. The low-ranked short blade and dagger given by Lung Wuqing were perfect for them. Therefore, Yi Chan gave them to the 2 elders one by one. 3 low-ranked treasures. You have to know that only a few of us elders have treasures. Only a few of us have found treasures that are suitable for us from the treasuries of our institutions. Those that are not suitable for us won't improve our powers at all. For example, if you ask a sword user to use a blade, even if it's a low-ranked great blade, it won't be as good as an ordinary great sword. It's very hard to find a suitable treasure. Many people use them for their whole lives. All the onlookers popped up their eyes and gasped in shock. Last time in the Northwest Auction House, the reason why Lynch was able to buy the low-ranked great blade, the air-splitting blade, was that the elder who used blades didn't want to compete with them. After all, Lynch would definitely become the backbone of the North Snow Martial Academy in the future. Therefore, the elder of the North Snow Martial Academy had to show some respect to him. Although the other elders didn't have to show respect to Lynch, if they went to the auction house, the elder of the North Snow Martial Academy would definitely go as well. If they bought the air-splitting blade, they would still give it to Lynch as a reward. Therefore, unless it was a big auction where all the treasures were gathered, the elders would rarely show up. Only in small auctions would the disciples from all the top institutions compete with each other. Good blade. Good dagger. The eyes of the 7th elder and the 9th elder shone, and they both showed a faint smile. In fact, Yi-chan still had a low-ranked great blade, but it was in his storage ring, which was still in the head elder's storage ring. Therefore, no matter what, he couldn't disturb the head elder. In a battle between powerful martial artists, a slight carelessness could result in the defeat of the head elder. Without a doubt, it would be a huge blow to the head elder, who was the backbone of the group, in order to take out a low-ranked great blade. Yi-chan knew what he should do. The battle between the two institutions started. Nearly 100 mid-clasping Yuan realm martial artists and above had been fighting against each other. It was a spectacular scene. However, only 1/3 of them had low-ranked great weapons, while the others were either barehanded or only had ordinary weapons. What they were fighting against was their mastery of martial arts. Little brat die. All of a sudden, an elder of the multiple mountain martial school leapt towards Yi-chan and threw a kick towards him. Boom! The ground collapsed. Layer after layer of cracks appeared on the ground. Without a sword, Yi-chan madly activated the crane shadow steps and stepped back. He didn't dare to take the attack head-on. Where do you think you're going? This elder was the multiple mountain martial school's outer head elder. He was a peak-level mid-clasping Yuan realm martial artist, only one step away from becoming an inner head elder. Under his full power, Yi-chan, who didn't have a sword in his hand, was no match for him at all. Brother Yi, take this. Zhu Mei saw that Yi-chan was in a bad situation, so she hurriedly threw her low-ranked great sword, the hidden fragrance sword, to Yi-chan. As for Su Jing, who had always been aggressive, she didn't join the fight. Instead, she stood in front of Zhu Mei and Luo Hanshan, in case any sneak attacks from the multiple mountain martial school's elders might launch. Yi-chan seemed to have eyes on the back of his head. He didn't even need to look at Zhu Mei and Luo Hanshan. He gripped the hilt of the hidden fragrance sword. Nice sword. In fact, the effect of a great weapon was limited. It could at most increase the attacking power by 10%, but it wouldn't be able to change the overall situation. However, the most important thing about a great weapon was its toughness, which made it very hard to break. The higher a martial artist's cultivation was, the more powerful his Zhen Qi would be. Ordinary weapons could no longer withstand the circulation of Zhen Qi, and would be broken after a few times of use. Once a martial artist reached the astral reaching realm, his Zhen Qi would transform into Zhen Yuan, and any ordinary weapon would shatter upon contact with it. Only low-rank great weapons could barely allow astral reaching realm martial artists to fully activate their Zhen Yuan, and mid-rank great weapons would be the best. So what if you have a low-ranked great sword? You will still die. The multiple mountain martial school's outer head elder grinned. While in the air, he launched 18 kicks in a row. Each kick was as heavy as a small mountain, smashing down towards Yi-chan. Swirling wind. The hidden fragrance sword was slim and long. It wasn't suitable for Yi-chan, but it was still much better than the low-rank great spear and the hidden cloud sword. He gripped the sword with his right hand and swung it, leaving a beautiful arc in the air. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sharp and long sword Qi swooshed straight up, stirred up the airflow in the desert, and finally formed a huge tornado. The tornado sucked the sand into it, then transformed into an even more terrifying tornado, rumbling towards the 18 mountain-like silhouettes of Yi-chen's legs. Boom! Yellow sand poured down from the sky, the tornado was shattered, and the 18 silhouettes of Yi-chen's legs also disappeared. Lose! With the hidden fragrance sword in his hand, the sharp Qi on his body was unstoppable. It was like a peerless great sword that had been sharpened, tearing apart the atmosphere. His tornado-broken clouds had been shattered, but he did not care at all. Tapping his foot on the ground, he floated in the air like a cloud. Then the hidden fragrance sword slashed down without any trace of attack. It's that move. Yuan Henging and Zhuang Fei were both frightened. They were both defeated by this move. They didn't even have the chance to fight back. Chapter 163. Crackle. Thunder exploded as sword Qi shot out. This sword strike was incredibly fast. Under the shocked gaze of the multiple mountain martial school's head elder, the sword strike landed heavily on the defensive Zhen Qi layer. Puff! His protective Zhen Qi shattered, and blood splattered everywhere. How is this possible? Pointing his finger at Yi-chan, the multiple mountain martial school's head elder spat out a mouthful of blood. He couldn't believe that he couldn't even take a single sword attack from Yi-chan. Not only that, he couldn't even defend himself against his Zhan Qi. Yichun was only an early clasping Yuan realm martial artist. Even if he was a genius, he shouldn't have been able to defeat him so easily. As he spoke, he once again spat out a mouthful of blood that contained remnants of sword qi. He retreated with heavy injuries and had already lost the ability to continue fighting. Yichun sneered. Even Yuan Henging and Zhuang Fei together couldn't take this sword attack, not to mention a single person. However, the opponent was indeed very powerful. He could actually take a sword attack and not die. Sword Qi Thunder. Sword Qi actually produced thunder. How fast would it take to do that? He is only an early clasping Yuan realm warrior. How could he perform his sword art to such a level? Is it because of the sword intent? That must be the case. Only sword intent can greatly increase the power of sword arts. Both speed and power will be greatly increased. Most of the onlookers were sect elders, so their eyesight was very good. They could tell that this sword was unusual at a glance. Unbeknownst to them, the one who was even more shocked was the Sky Cloud Martial School's elder, who was still fighting. This is the highest level of the startling cloud sword art, thunderous sword qi. I am ashamed. I have also trained the shocking cloud sword art, but I have not reached the level of sword qi thunder yet. This kid is indeed a genius of the Sky Cloud Martial School. It is worth it to fight for him. Even if I die here, I will still be contributing to the school. That's right, this kid is the biggest hope of our Sky Cloud Martial School. Killing him is the same as destroying the foundation of our Sky Cloud Martial School. We cannot let him go. Kill. 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 Yichun's power had motivated many of the Sky Cloud Martial School's elders. All of their auras had been boosted, and their fighting power had increased to the next level, surpassing their own limits. Not good, the opponent's aura is rising. Quickly suppress it, we can't let them take the initiative. The group of multiple mountain martial schools elders had been in an absolute advantage, but within the blink of an eye, that advantage was gone. On the contrary, they were caught unprepared by the counterattack, and were thrown into confusion. It's that brat Yichun's doing. You guys go kill him. If we don't get rid of this kid, he'll be another great enemy in the future. The multiple mountain martial school only had one more inner elder than the Sky Cloud Martial School. Therefore, they couldn't free themselves from the Sky Cloud Martial School. Therefore, a few powerful outer elders were sent out to fight against Yichun. Despicable. The fourth elder swung his spear and pushed away the two multiple mountain martial school's inner elders, intending to help Yichun. Where are you going? With the low-grade great spear, the fourth elder's power was second only to the Sky Cloud Martial School's head elder. At this moment, an inner elder of the multiple mountain martial school, who was even more powerful than the Sky Cloud Martial School's head elder, blocked his way. The other multiple mountain martial school's head elder didn't stay idle either. They started fighting against each other. Within a radius of over 10 miles, sand and dust instantly rose into the air while fierce airwaves spread out in all directions. He became famous after this battle. Lung Wuqing smiled faintly, while the other barbarian devil martial school's disciples were confused. They didn't know what had happened to their big brother, who had always been cold and cruel. Indeed, after this battle, Yichun had become famous in the 9 nations. As time went by, his fame might even spread to the other nations in the South Shore region, injuring the multiple mountain martial school's head elder with a single sword move. Even many young hidden dragon-ranked martial artists couldn't do this. Before this, Yichun was only a nameless kid. In the Emerald Martial School, Lu Wuxiang and Ji Shuyan were both stunned. Yichun's speed of growth made them feel powerless for the first time. Was this what people meant by one brilliant feat? But this was way too amazing. Facing the 3 multiple mountain martial school's outer elders, Yichun neither stepped back nor dodged. Instead, he said with a resonant voice, 3 is too few. You can't even withstand a single strike. How dare you? Arrogant. Today I will make you bleed. The 3 multiple mountain martial school's outer elders were enraged. In terms of power, they were no weaker than the multiple mountain martial school's head elder. The 3 of them together were more than powerful enough to kill Yichun. But at this moment, they were underestimated by Yichun. Their killing intent and Zhan Qi surged out uncontrollably, bringing up clouds of sand. Mountain-shattering stamp. Shadow-cutting 10 moves. Xiantianqi art. The three Sky Martial School's outer elders each launched their most powerful martial arts, sending out waves of fierce qi and blade power towards Yichun. Instantly, terrifying marks were left on the surface of the sand. Swirling clouds. Yichun had never been the type of person who would stick to the old rules. He would always add his own things into his sword movements. This sword movement originally used the sword qi to twist the qi flow and form a tornado to attack the enemy. However, he had let himself into it and stood in the eye of the tornado, which was the calmest area. Outside the tornado, Yichun had a natural layer of defense. Along with the tornado, Yichun released streams of sword qi towards the three Sky Martial School's outer elders. Puff, puff, puff. Streams of sword qi darted out, covering the entire sky. More terrifyingly, after being spun by the tornado, not only did the sword qi move from a tricky angle, but the power was also terrifying. One of the multiple mountain martial school's outer elders was careless. His arm was cut off by Yichun's sword qi. Retreat! Retreat! The other two Sky Martial School's outer elders' attacks were broken as well, and they hurriedly retreated. The crowd had already become numb to this. They didn't even know how to express their feelings. Someone sighed and said, "This kid's fighting style is amazing. He can do whatever he wants. He will definitely become a great warrior in the future, but of course the premise is that he can live until then." Disciples ranked in the top 50 or top 30 of the Hidden Dragon ranking have already grown up. They are no longer afraid of the older generation's powerful martial artists. If we give this kid some more time, he will be able to reach that level as well. That's a bit presumptuous. Once you reach the Clasping Yuan realm, it will be more and more difficult for you to improve your cultivation. Therefore, you won't be able to improve your power by leaps and bounds, unless you have a great opportunity. You're right, the Heavenly Dream Ancient region can barely be counted as an open opportunity, otherwise, how could they step into the Clasping Yuan realm so easily? The true spirit continent was vast and boundless. No one knew how many millions of miles it was, and the population of this continent was in the trillions. Even if there was only one genius among 10 million people, there would still be millions of geniuses. With so many geniuses, not everyone could become a peerless, powerful martial artist. Once one's potential was exhausted, he or she would have no choice but to focus on his or her own cultivation. However, the path of a martial artist was a path that defied the natural order. Time waits for no one. Once you accumulated enough potential, you wouldn't have enough time to continue your cultivation anymore. But of course there would always be a small number of people who were extremely lucky. Before they exhausted their potential, they would have great opportunities to improve their power by leaps and bounds, and become peerless, powerful martial artists. For example, Xianhou had stepped into the life and death realm at the age of 35, and became one of the most powerful martial artists in this continent. She was as powerful as Su King, Dragon King, Evil King, and the others. She had a lifespan of over 1,000 years, and could even regrow her body from a single drop of blood. Therefore, opportunities were an indispensable part of becoming a powerful martial artist. Almost no one could reach this level without an opportunity, and if there were, it would be an opportunity for him or herself, and his or her potential would be limitless. After all, every human had a limit to their potential, and if an unlimited potential wasn't an opportunity, then what was? Limitless shocking cloud. Limitless shocking cloud. One sword of impermanence. As Yichun launched the moves of the shocking cloud sword art one after another, the three multiple mountain martial school's outer elders, who had been approaching aggressively, were forced back again and again, their bodies covered in blood. Seeing that the three of them were about to lose their lives, one of the three outer elders suddenly took out a dark red iron bomb from his storage ring, while his face twisted. How despicable! Not only did they try to bully us with numbers, they even took out a red light fire melting bomb. They have completely humiliated the multiple mountain martial school. This kid is very dangerous. That red light fire melting bomb can kill ordinary peak level early Clasping Yuan realm martial artists, and even mid Clasping Yuan realm martial artists would be severely injured by it. Once he is severely injured, he would be in real danger. Many elders of the multiple mountain martial school were disdainful of that man's evil means, but they didn't think that Yichun would be killed by that red light fire melting bomb. Geniuses always had their own ways to protect themselves, but that was exactly the problem. Once Yi-chan was severely injured by that red light fire melting bomb, the tables would be turned instantly. Die. The multiple mountain martial school's outer elder's face was twisted with a hideous look. He injected his Zhan-Qi into the red light fire melting bomb, then threw it out towards Yi-chan. Boom! A raging flame exploded, covering a wide area. Even with Yi-chan's great speed, he couldn't dodge all of the flames, and was struck by the flames on the edge of the explosion, which sent him flying backwards. Brother Yi. The faces of Zhu Mei and the other two elders turned pale. The faces of the fourth elder and the other two elders turned pale. Swoosh! Standing lightly on the desert, Yi-chan gave a faint smile and said, "Is this all you've got? Then you will die for sure." What? He's not injured? How is this possible? The red light fire melting bomb is made with the firepower from the stunning sky. Although its power is largely reduced, it shouldn't be completely unharmed. The multiple mountain martial school's outer elder, who threw out the bomb, couldn't believe his own eyes. He said to the other two elders beside him, "Before we came here, the school gave each of us a red light fire melting bomb. Don't save them, throw them all out and kill him." Back in the Nine Nations, the multiple mountain martial school and a few other institutions had discovered an ancient site together. Quite a lot of red light fire melting bombs were found in the site, and they had divided them among themselves. However, there was no way to make these red light fire melting bombs. Even astral-reaching realm martial artists couldn't make them. If it weren't for the fact that they were escorting their elite disciples to the Heaven Dream ancient region, they wouldn't have been able to get a red light fire melting bomb each. After all, the school had basically given out all the red light fire melting bombs to them, and they were told not to use them unless it was a critical moment. Alright, I don't believe that we can't kill him. They had already lost all of their dignity, and the only thing they could think of at the moment was to kill Yi-chan. Boom! Another two thunderous booms were heard. Dazzling flames overlapped with each other and spread out even further. With the crane shadow step, Yi-chan avoided the center of the explosion, and was only hit by the aftershock of the explosion. At this moment, a crystal-like Zhan-Qi shield suddenly lit up around his body. Pop! The Zhan-Qi shield was twisted, and the horrifying impact force sent him flying away. Ordinary Zhan-Qi shields can never have such a strong defensive power, and it doesn't look like a defensive martial art? Is it a low-rank great armor? That's possible. Low-rank great armors are relatively precious among low-rank great weapons. Although they can't improve the defensive power by much, even a little bit would be invaluable. Besides, he wasn't hit directly by the red light fire melting bomb. Instead, he was hit by the aftershock of the explosion. That's why he didn't get injured at all. These people were all experienced and knowledgeable. They had figured out that Yi-chan was wearing a low-rank great armor. Low-rank great armors could improve the defensive power, which was more or less useful. Chapter 164. The sand surface collapsed as Yi-chan landed heavily on the ground. He reached out his hand and touched his chest. Underneath his clothes it was hard, smooth and cold. Just as everyone had guessed, he was indeed wearing a low-rank armor. This low-rank armor was obtained from Lung Wuqing, and it was one of the more precious treasures. With this low-rank great armor, when Yi-chan activated his protective Zhan-Qi, his defensive power had increased by 15%. However, this was still not enough to block the explosion of the red light fire melting bomb. He had to stay away from the center of the explosion. After all, the low-rank great armor could only improve his defensive power. It couldn't protect him from everything. Die! Rising into the air, Yi-chan gently swung his sword and launched the last movement of the Sky Cloud sword art. Along with a thunderous sound, the three's protective Zhan-Qi was shattered. Except for the most powerful one, the other two fell on the ground. No one knew if they were still alive or not. Letting out a long breath, Yi-chan threw a medicinal pill into his mouth. He didn't chase after the other two. Although he was an early clasping Yuan realm martial artist, his cultivation was way too low. After such a great battle, he didn't have much Zhan-Qi left. Fortunately, he had some medicinal pills to replenish his Zhan-Qi, otherwise, he would be in great danger. In the two battles, two outer elders of the multiple mountain martial school were severely injured, and the other two were still alive. Wuxia and the other hidden dragon-ranking martial artists were all stunned, silently wondering what their chances of winning would be if they were the ones fighting against Yi-chan. However, the result was very unfavorable to them. They had almost no chance of winning. Even if they used their most powerful life-saving skills, they wouldn't be able to win. This guy is way too scary. Even the multiple mountain martial school's head elder couldn't rival him. Doesn't this mean that he's going to suppress me forever? I'm so pissed off. Yuan Henging sat on the ground with his legs crossed, trying to heal himself. However, his injuries couldn't be healed within a short period of time. It would take at least 2 to 3 months. During this period, he would have to take all kinds of precious medicinal pills to replenish his yuan qi, otherwise, it would be very difficult for him to regain his peak power. Thinking of the power of that sword move, Yuan Henging couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. Back then, he had already used his most powerful skill but still failed to block it. Henging, this brat injured you? The Heavenly Eagle Castle's first elder suddenly asked. Yuan Henging really didn't want to admit it, but judging from the current situation, it didn't matter whether he admitted it or not. In everyone's eyes, he was definitely not as good as Yi-chan, so it was reasonable for him to be injured by him. Thinking up to this point, he nodded heavily and said with a cold face, Zhuang Fei and I were both injured by him, and he took away our secret manuals as well. We will pay for this sooner or later. The headmaster of the Sky Eagle Castle Martial School was expressionless. You should take care of your body first. As for revenge, don't even think about it for 1 or 2 years, unless you can reach the mid-clasping Yuan realm. Besides, the next Hidden Dragon rank competition will start in 1.5 years. You should focus on your training. I can't accept this. I won't be able to vent my anger if I don't kill him. It's not up to you to kill him. The higher-ups of the Ziyang house will not let him continue to grow. It was like this 20 years ago, and it will be like this 20 years later. Yuan Henging frowned. Purple Sun Martial School? That's right. 20 years ago, the Sky Cloud Martial School was a top-rank 8 martial institution, only slightly weaker than rank 7 martial institutions, while the Purple Sun Martial School was a top-rank 8 martial institution. Their overall power was not as strong as the Sky Cloud Martial School. When they surrounded the remaining forces of the 9 evil cult, the Purple Sun Martial School used a trick to deceive the Sky Cloud Martial School, causing the warriors of the Sky Cloud Martial School to be surrounded by the powerful warriors of the 9 evil cult. After that, the Sky Cloud Martial School couldn't swallow this, so they also used a scheme to kill the current leader of the Purple Sun Martial School and a few top inner elders. Headmaster, are you saying that the Ziyang Martial School does not want to see the Sky Cloud Martial School surpass them? Of course. After all, the Sky Cloud Martial School has a great foundation. Powerful warriors can be cultivated slowly. 5 years ago, the Sky Cloud Martial School had already regained the power of a rank 8 martial institution. Besides, with the help of the Great Master, the other martial institutions would not dare to make any reckless moves. But now, the Sky Cloud Martial School has a young powerful hidden dragon-ranked martial artist. The Ziyang Martial School will not be able to eat or sleep in peace. They will definitely try everything they can to kill him. Hearing this, Yuan Henging was a bit annoyed. He really wanted to kill Yi-chan himself, but Yi-chan was unimaginably powerful. He would only die if he tried to kill him. Chum, you are going to die anyway, I don't need to do it myself. Let's see who will laugh in the end. Boom! 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 Each of the multiple mountain martial school's outer elders had a red light fire bomb. After fighting for quite a while, seeing that they couldn't kill their opponents within a short time, they all threw out their red light fire bombs. Immediately, 3 outer elders of the Sky Cloud Martial School didn't manage to dodge in time, and were hit right on the head. They were blown to death and fell down from the air. Do you think only you have weapons? We have them too, blow them up. Some outer elders of the Sky Cloud Martial School took out dark cyan iron bombs from their storage rings, found an opportunity and threw them out. Pop! Silver lightning bolts dazzled in the air, along with which, a few outer elders of the multiple mountain martial school fell down from the air. The Sky Cloud Martial School actually has a silver light thunderbolt bomb. How unexpected! The silver light thunderbolt bomb is as famous as the red light fire bomb. It is made from the thunder power of the stunning sky, which is the first level of the Sky Cloud Martial School. Once thrown out, it is powerful enough to blow up a small mountain. Quite a few outer elders of both sides have died since the beginning of the battle, but none of the inner elders have died. But as time goes by, I'm not sure. It was rare to see a fight between two top-ranked institutions, therefore, the crowd didn't want to leave. Instead, they were all discussing the fight with different expressions on their faces. Mountain condensed sword chi. After swallowing the pill, Yi-chan rushed out without waiting for the multiple mountain martial school's elders to attack him. But of course he wasn't stupid. He wouldn't go to the areas where there were more inner elders. Instead, he chose the areas where the outer elders gathered, and released his soul power to cover a range of 500 meters, in case any multiple mountain martial school's inner elders chased after him. With a single sword move, Yi-chan broke the defense of a multiple mountain martial school's outer elder, and killed him for good. Yi-chan frowned. The Sky Cloud Martial School was in a bad situation. Among the outer elders, both sides had some winners and losers, and the casualties were almost the same. As for the inner elders, they were all from the multiple mountain martial school, and had already firmly suppressed the Sky Cloud Martial School. Sadly, Yi-chan wasn't powerful enough to deal with an inner elder of the multiple mountain martial school, not to mention affecting the overall situation. If this goes on, the Sky Cloud Martial School will be in danger. I need to find a way to sneakily attack an inner elder of the multiple mountain martial school. Yi-chan moved to the place where the outer elders were fighting. He glanced around and soon found his target. His opponent was at the outer edge of the place where the inner elders were fighting. His opponent was the Sky Cloud Martial School's 9th elder. The 9th elder was good at assassination, but he was much weaker in a head-on battle. If it weren't for his low-rank dagger and his extremely fast movement skill, he would have already been severely injured or even killed. That's him. Both sides had the same number of inner elders, therefore, an inner elder could be very useful. Otherwise, Yi-chan wouldn't have come up with this plan. The heart refining. The last movement of the Sky Cloud sword art was incredibly powerful, but it was still not as powerful as the heart refining. The heart refining would become more powerful as Yi-chan grew stronger, and the sword intent would also grow stronger. Therefore, it wouldn't be outdated even if he used it at the astral reaching realm. Yi-chan's swiftly moving body abruptly stopped. He paused in the air, then swung his sword down. Puff! The sword chi transformed into a beam of white light, darting out at a speed faster than the sound of thunder. Puff! The protective Zhan Qi of that multiple mountain martial school's inner elder was sliced open, and a sword mark appeared on his back. He let out a shrill growl. Kid, I will never forgive you. Boom! He turned around and launched another hack. A tens of meters long stream of blade chi was released, which looked like a thunderbolt. Only the lingering power released by the blade chi had already left a deep ditch on the desert surface. Yi-chan, be careful. The 9th elder didn't have enough time to save Yi-chan, so he had no choice but to take advantage of the opportunity created by Yi-chan. Mountain condensed sword chi. When the sword strike landed on the 9 mountain martial school's inner elder, Yi-chan had already prepared himself for it. Therefore, although the blade chi was fast, he still reacted to the incoming attack with a mountain-thick sword chi. Crack, crack, crack. The mountain condensed sword chi was more than one hack. Under the support of Yi-chan's Zhan Qi, the power of the blade chi was quickly consumed. Once the sword chi was completely shattered, the remaining blade chi was no longer a threat, and was shattered by Yi-chan with a single punch. Boom! While Yi-chan had created an opportunity, an inner elder of the Sky Cloud Martial School had been sent flying away, vomiting blood. Seeing this, Yi-chan had no choice but to rush to the other side. Right now, he and the Sky Cloud Martial School's people were bound together. Once those elders were defeated, he wouldn't be able to survive either. Therefore, he might as well put up a desperate fight. However, right at this moment, something unexpected happened. The Rudra Martial School's head elder was a beautiful woman. Seeing that the Emerald Martial Palace hadn't done anything yet, she slightly frowned. She then flashed and appeared in the middle of the crowd. People, this fight is not necessary at all. Let's stop now. Hearing her, an inner elder of the multiple mountain martial school sneered and said, Who do you think you are? This is our multiple mountain martial school's business. It's none of your business. By now they had already gained an absolute advantage. It was only a matter of time before they could defeat the Sky Cloud Martial School's people. They didn't think that someone would step in, which made them even angrier. Among the crowd, the Purple Sun Martial School's head elder's face darkened. He snorted coldly and said, "The Rudra Martial School has only been developing for over 10 years. How can they be so reckless? Just let the Sky Cloud Martial School die." The hatred between the Purple Sun Martial School and the Sky Cloud Martial School started 20 years ago. Therefore, the Purple Sun Martial School's head elder couldn't wait to see the Rudra Martial School's head elder die. The Rudra Martial School's head elder's face was as cold as ice. He took out a tablet from his storage ring. The tablet was a foot long, 2-inch thick, entirely glowing with a cyan light. A fierce cyan dragon was embossed on the surface of the tablet, coiling around it, making it look even more majestic. "People, are you still not going to stop?" The multiple mountain martial school's head elder glanced at the tablet in the Rudra Martial School's head elder's hand. His facial expression changed dramatically. He said word by word, "Little Azure Dragon Tablet, how come you have it? You don't need to worry about this. Just remember who the owner of this tablet is," said the Rudra Martial School's head elder coldly. The multiple mountain martial school's head elder's face darkened. He growled, "Multiple mountain martial school, stop." "What? Why stop?" "Head elder, we're about to defeat them." Many multiple mountain martial school's outer elders didn't understand what was going on. Only the inner elders seemed to have thought of something. Their facial expressions changed as well. Chapter 165. Although they didn't want to, they still stopped and gathered around the multiple mountain martial school's head elder. Although the number of the Sky Cloud Martial School's head elder was 1/6 less than before, the casualties weren't that great. Of course, the Sky Cloud Martial School's people wouldn't chase after them. Instead, they all went back and stood behind the head elder. Between the two groups of Sky Cloud Martial School's head elder was a mess, and tens of dead bodies were lying on the ground. At this moment, the onlookers had already burst into an uproar when they saw the tablet in the Rudra Martial School's head elder's hand. How could it be in the hands of a rank 8 martial school, the South Rudra Martial School? The owner of the little Azure Dragon Tablet is not that scary. What's important is his powerful background. Yeah, the little Azure Dragon Tablet appeared in the South Shore region. It's probably not that simple. We have to warn the others when we get back. Tell them not to mess with the South Shore region's disciples or elders. Anyone who dares to do so will be killed. Exactly, in case they do something terrible and bring disaster to the Rudra Martial School's head elder. The Purple Sun Martial School's head elder widely opened his eyes, staring at the cyan tablet in the Rudra Martial School's head elder's hand. The cyan dragon coiled around the tablet was releasing clouds of mist, and it was coldly looking at the world with its cyan eyes, as if it could see through people's hearts and souls. How is this possible? She is the descendant of that? What does she want in the Windy Nation? He wasn't thinking about the Rudra Martial School's head elder, but the leader of the Rudra Martial School, Long Bai. This mysterious woman had finally revealed her true face. No wonder the Rudra Martial School could rise so fast and become one of the top 5 martial institutions in the Windy Nation over 10 years ago. She is the descendant of that. In this case, the revival of the 9 evil cult was all within his expectation, and he had been preparing for it since 10 years ago. The Sky Cloud Martial School's head elder slowly let out a breath. The 4th elder said worriedly, "Originally, I thought that the remaining forces of the 9 evil cult were only left with a few small and big cats. But now it seems like that is not the case at all. Otherwise, that person wouldn't have arranged for more than 10 years ago to be on guard against this day." The head elder nodded and changed his tone. "We are only a rank 9 martial institution. Even though we are as powerful as rank 8 martial institutions, we are nothing but ants in their eyes. Therefore, we just need to do what we are supposed to do. We don't need to worry about other things." "That's true." Letting out a bitter laugh, the 4th elder rubbed his chin, feeling that he had been worrying a bit too much. A battle at that level, even 1,000 of him would only be killed. Instead of worrying about these unrealistic things, he would rather focus on improving his cultivation and try to reach the peak level late clasping Yuan realm as soon as possible. Reuniting with Lu Hanshan and the other two, Yichun gave the subtle fragrant sword back to Zhu Mei and said, "Big sister, Thank you for lending me your sword. Without it, it would be very hard for me to beat them. Zhu Mei smiled and said, with your current strength and potential, you will soon have your own low-rank sword. I heard that your Yi family has a family heirloom sword, the Absolute Shadow Sword. This sword can break through the obstruction of the air, increase the speed of the sword, and kill people without leaving a trace. There is this sword, but only the current patriarch can wield it. The Absolute Shadow Sword was one of the best low-grade swords. Its effect was to increase the speed of the sword and kill enemies with speed. However, Yi Chan had never thought about inheriting the position of the Yi clan master. That was not his dream. Looking at the tablet in the Rudra Martial School's head elder's hand, Yi Chan suddenly asked, what is this little azure dragon tablet? Does it have a powerful background? Lu Hanshan, who had always been knowledgeable, shook his head and said, I don't know either, maybe not at that level yet. You see, none of the outer elders know about it, only some core and inner elders know about it, but they obviously don't want to say it. No matter what, this time thanks to the Rudra Martial School, Yi Chan was very clear that a rank 7 martial institution was way more powerful than a rank 8 martial institution. A rank 7 martial institution's individual power was 1 or 2 levels higher than a Sky Cloud Martial School's head elder. They could still fight for a while, but as time went on, the gap between the two martial institutions and the Rudra Martial School's head elder would be obvious. Su Jing, who didn't like to talk, didn't say anything. She glanced sideways and saw the Emerald Martial Palace's head elder staring at that little azure dragon tablet with a gloomy face. In the middle of the battlefield, the Rudra Martial School's head elder slowly descended from the sky, stepped on the sand and said, the Heavenly Dream Ancient Region is not only a place of adventure, but also a place of slaughter. Our disciples have entered the Heavenly Dream Ancient Region. Their lives are all in the hands of fate. Not to mention the fact that you don't have any evidence, even if you do, you can't do whatever you want. As for the dead disciples, they are no longer geniuses, why do you have to fight for them? It's not worth it. The multiple mountain martial school's head elder said unwillingly, then our eldest disciple died in vain. Since you've entered the Heavenly Dream Ancient Region, you should be prepared to die. If everyone died like your multiple mountain martial school, who would the other fallen disciples find to take revenge? How can they compare with Hong Qianjun? A multiple mountain martial school's inner elder retorted. The Rudra Martial School's head elder's face darkened. 2 disciples of our Rudra Martial School have died as well. Now, I suspect that it was your multiple mountain martial school's disciples who did it. Can I take revenge on you? Once the little azure dragon token is sent out, the entire area with a radius of 1,000 miles around the Rudra Martial School will be flattened. How could it be our multiple mountain martial school? The multiple mountain martial school's inner elder's voice turned weak. He couldn't refute the Rudra Martial School's words, and if he insisted, the Rudra Martial School might really start a fight with the multiple mountain martial school. The multiple mountain martial school might be one of the most powerful institutions in the 9 nations, but compared to the Rudra Martial School's background, the multiple mountain martial school was not even worth mentioning. Alright, let's call it a day. Let's all go back to our respective institutions. At the same time, the cyan light that had been soaring into the sky gradually dissipated, and the light gate had already disappeared into the air. The next time they saw it would be another 10 years later. Evil Blood Martial School, let's go. Shapeless Martial School, let's go. White Deer Cave, Yuehua Martial School. People from all institutions leaped onto their gigantic beasts and flew into the air in groups. Within a few blinks of an eye, they had all disappeared into the clouds. Glancing at Yi Chan, the multiple mountain martial school's head elder snorted coldly in his head. A strong intent of killing emerged in his pupils, then he turned around and said loudly, let's go back as well. After all the people from the other 8 nations had left, the Emerald Martial School and the Purple Sun Martial School's head elder also left one after another. Soon, only the people from the Rudra Martial School and the Sky Cloud Martial School were left. The Sky Cloud Martial School's head elder cupped his hands and said, Elder Long, this time our Sky Cloud Martial School owes the Rudra Martial School a huge favor. We will certainly report this to our leader when we get back. The Rudra Martial School's head elder had the same surname as Long Bai. The Rudra Martial School's head elder said in a mysterious tone, I didn't do this to help the Sky Cloud Martial School, but to help that little bastard. The head elder followed her gaze and asked curiously, Yi-chan? Indeed, he has great potential. He doesn't deserve to die in this unfair fight. But of course he still has to walk his own path in the future. No one can help him. Powerful people can't become powerful without help. The head elder nodded. She was right, those who could truly become powerful were all those who had survived. As for those so-called geniuses who had been living under the protection of their elders, they were like flowers in a greenhouse. They could never become powerful people. Only those who had gone through thousands of hardships could have a slight hope of becoming powerful. About the little Azure Dragon token, only you leaders should know about it. They don't need to know about it, because it won't do them any good. Elder Long said again. I know about this. The head elder was not stupid, he understood a lot of things right away. If he guessed it right, Yi-chan had been selected for now, but he should not be the only one. There were countless geniuses in the South Shore region, and even the entire True Spirit continent. Some of them had great achievements in the early stages, but became mediocre in the later stages. Some of them were just ordinary in the early stages but could amaze the world in the later stages. No one could tell for sure. The only way was to replace them with numbers, and then slowly eliminate the unqualified ones. Under Elder Long's lead, the people of the Rudra Martial School got on their demonic beasts and flew towards the Windy Nation. Clearing his throat, the head elder said, Don't ask too much about what happened today. Yes. Yi-chan and the other three were a bit confused, but they still nodded. Alright, let's go back. Screech. Screech. Riding on the Windy Eagle, the group of people carried the dead bodies of the Sky Cloud Martial School's elders and flew into the air, soon disappearing into the horizon. 10 days later, the group returned to the Sky Cloud Martial School. That night, the leaders of the Sky Cloud Martial School had a meeting. The next day, Yi-chan exchanged all the things he had gained from the Heavenly Dream Ancient region for a huge amount of low-rank and mid-rank soul stones. Originally, he didn't plan to hand over the Great Mystery Art Manual, because the other mid-rank Earthrealm Palm Art Manual was more than enough for him. However, the battle in the desert had made him realize something. Since those elders of the Sky Cloud Martial School were willing to risk their lives for him, why should he keep it to himself? He believed that with these two mid-rank Earthrealm manuals, the Sky Cloud Martial School would be able to return to its peak within a few years, and might even become a Rank 7 institution. During this trip to the Heavenly Dream Ancient region, Yi-chan had gained a lot. Except for the two mid-rank Earthrealm manuals, he had exchanged all the other things he had gained for 100,000 low-rank soul stones. Adding the mid-rank Earthrealm manuals, he had gained a total of 100,000 low-rank soul stones and 6,000 mid-rank soul stones. According to the actual value, that was 400,000 low-rank soul stones. 400,000 low-rank soul stones was a huge amount to the entire Sky Cloud Martial School. After all, every single member of the Sky Cloud Martial School needed soul stones for their cultivation. Day by day, it would accumulate to an astonishing amount. These 400,000 low-rank soul stones equal to the Sky Cloud Martial School's storage for years. Normally, an inner elder wouldn't be able to earn so many soul stones even if he spent 10 or 20 years, because they didn't have anything more precious than a mid-rank Earthrealm manual. With such a huge amount of soul stones, Yi-chan wouldn't have to worry about not having enough soul stones to cultivate for a long time in the future. Of course, his previous worries were not without reason. At the early condensing reality realm, one low-rank soul stone would be consumed every 5 days. Yi-chan's consumption rate was twice as fast as the others, which meant that he would consume 2 low-rank soul stones every 5 days. At the mid-condensing reality realm, Yi-chan would consume 2 low-rank soul stones every 3 days. At the late condensing reality realm, he would consume 2 low-rank soul stones every day. And at the early clasping yuan realm, he would consume 10 low-rank soul stones every day, which meant that he would consume 300 soul stones every month, and 3,600 soul stones every year. With his original storage of low-rank soul stones, he would only be able to cultivate for 3 years. After 3 years, he would have to do some tasks for the school to exchange for soul stones, or just like this time when he came to the Heavenly Dream Ancient region, he would have to exchange for some precious treasures. How much he could exchange for would depend on his luck. At the very least, after reaching the clasping yuan realm, he wouldn't have to worry about money anymore. Instead, he would have to worry about the number of soul stones. It was said that in large-scale auctions, Items would no longer be auctioned with gold, but with soul stones. Whoever had more soul stones would be able to buy what they wanted. At the moment, Yi-chan just needed a low-rank greatsword, so he would need to use soul stones for sure. A few more days passed. During this period, Yi-chan didn't start to cultivate the mysterious great art right away. Instead, he spent some time digesting the experience he gained from the fights, and turned it into his own. After he had fully comprehended it, he started to cultivate the mid-rank Earth Realm martial art, the mysterious great art. Chapter 166. The dark night was as quiet as water. Inside the room, Yi-chan was sitting on the bed with his legs crossed, both of his hands on his knees, meditating. In front of him was the soft and bright moonlight shining through the screen window. As a mid-rank Earth Realm martial art, the Great Mystery Art's Zhenqi circulation route was more than 10 times more complicated than the pure Jun Zhenqi. Many important parts of the Great Mystery Art were twisted and turned, like a dead knot or a mess, which made people completely confused. Currently, if Yi-chan wanted to master the first level of the Great Mystery Art, he had to complete a big circle first, and extract a stream of Great Mystery Zhenqi. However, with the complexity of the Great Mystery Art, it was not easy to complete a big circle. At least, Yi-chan was having a headache because of the complicated Zhenqi circulation route. He didn't dare to be careless, because he was afraid that his Zhenqi might go astray and cause serious internal injuries. Sweat was dripping down from his forehead, but Yi-chan didn't notice it at all. His eyes were closed, and his eyebrows were frowning and relaxing, changing several times within a short period of time. Phew! After a long time, Yi-chan slowly opened his eyes, and breathed out a mouthful of turbid air with slight tiredness. No wonder mid-rank Earth Realm martial arts could become the most powerful martial art in our martial institutions. Even the first level is so hard to master, and it took me half a day of hard work. I wonder how hard it would be to master it to the highest level. In the past, when Yi-chan practiced martial arts, he had made great progress, but this time he felt that it was quite hard. He didn't dare to be careless with every step, which was extremely exhausting. The night passed without any words. In the following half a month, Yi-chan practiced the Great Mystery Art at night, and practiced the low-rank Earth Realm martial art that he got from the Heavenly Dream Ancient region during the day. Although the days were boring, they were not idle. Another half a month passed. On the cliff, the sea of clouds was surging. The silhouette flashed and moved horizontally on the flat ground, like the floating clouds and flowing water, like a ghost. Suddenly, the silhouette split into two and pounced out from two different directions. One of the silhouette's clothes fluttered in the wind, while the other had a dull face and a slightly transparent body. It was obvious that the silhouette was formed by Zhenqi. Split again. After a few steps, Yi-chan's body shook, and the second Zhenqi silhouette dashed out. It looked much more real than the first one, and its Zhenqi clothes fluttered in the wind. 3 silhouettes, 1 real and 2 fake, walked side by side, punched on the cliff together. Boom! The fist power poured into the rock wall as Yi-chan jumped back. While he was still in the air, he groaned. Jean! The next moment, the 2 true Qi silhouettes merged into his body, becoming one with each other. As his feet landed on the ground, Yi-chan let out a long breath. He lifted his head and saw 3 deep holes on the wall in front of him. The 2 holes on the side were half a meter wide and 3 to 4 meters deep, while the one in the middle was 1 meter wide and 6 meters deep. There was stone powder on the edge. Not bad, it has 50% of my attacking power. Yi-chan nodded. He hadn't reached the highest level of the separating shadows flying art yet, but it was almost there. Right now, he could already split into 2 Zhenqi silhouettes within a short period of time to confuse his enemies. In a fierce fight, because of the fast-moving speed of both sides, the human silhouettes were already blurry. Therefore, the sudden appearance of 2 Zhenqi silhouettes with attacking power would definitely confuse the enemy's sight and vision, which would be a great surprise. Apart from this, the speed of the separating shadows flying art was 1 level higher than the crane shadow steps. Within a single breath, he could move about 300 meters, which was even faster than the elders of the martial skill pavilion. What a shame the mysterious great art has stopped at the 5th level, and I can't break into the 6th level yet. But my overall power has improved a lot compared to before. The mysterious great art was obtained from the Heaven Dream Battle Palace, and it was much more precious than any ordinary mid-rank Earth Realm martial art. Yichun had only reached the 5th level, but the quality of his Zhanqi had already surpassed the peak of the 7th level of the pure Jun Zhanqi, and the total quantity of his Zhanqi was almost the same as the pure Jun Zhanqi. It was hard to imagine how powerful his Zhanqi would be once he reached the 6th level, the 7th level, or even the 11th level. Of course, everything has its advantages and disadvantages. The mysterious great art was so powerful, but the difficulty of cultivating it would also be much higher. After a whole month, Yichun had barely reached the 5th level, and his overall power had improved a little, but it was not a big improvement. In the morning, when the first beam of sunlight shone on the ground, Yichun murmured, "It's time to see the leader." On the main road of the Sky Cloud Martial School. "Head brother." "Good morning, head brother." A group of inner disciples walked towards him, both male and female. The strongest among them was already at the late condensing reality realm, while the weakest was only at the early condensing reality realm. Seeing Yichun from afar, they all greeted him as head brother with great respect. Yichun nodded but didn't say anything. After Yichun had walked far away, the group of inner disciples started whispering to each other. "Our head brother is now a legendary genius of the Windy Nation. He has mastered the sword intent, stepped into the clasping Yuan realm, and severely injured the multiple mountain martial school's head elder with a single sword attack. Every single one of these achievements is more than enough to shock the world. He's even more powerful than the 4 childs. The era of the 4 childs is over. Now among the younger generation of the Windy Nation, there are 6 most powerful ones: Young Master Emerald, Young Master North Snow, Lynch, Qin Yulian, Su Jing, and our head brother Yichun." Yichun didn't hear what the others were talking about. Even if he did, he wouldn't feel proud of himself. Perhaps he was already one of the most powerful people in the Windy Nation, but in the True Spirit continent, he was still at the bottom. Besides, he always felt that if he stayed in the Sky Cloud Martial School, he would never be able to reach the astral reaching realm, and he would never be able to become one of the most powerful martial artists in the True Spirit continent. After all, his dream was not just the astral reaching realm. Walking around a large number of buildings, Yichun arrived in front of a huge palace. "Brother Yi, this is the Drifting Cloud Palace. Only the inner elders and leaders are allowed to enter." 8 attendants stopped Yichun and said in a neither humble nor arrogant tone. Yichun raised his head and said blandly, "I have something important to discuss with the leader and the inner elders. Please inform them." "Something important? How important?" The first attendant on the left frowned. Yichun said, "Just tell them that I, Yichun, want to leave the Windy Nation to gain more experience." "Leave the Windy Nation?" The 8 attendants widened their eyes. They had already heard about what Yichun had done in the scorching ancient desert. If nothing unexpected happened, he would be the leader of the Sky Cloud Martial School in the future. As for Luo Hanshan, although he was the leader's son, he was not powerful enough. Therefore, the leader's position would not be passed on to him. "Wait a minute, I will inform the leader and the inner elders." No matter how stupid the attendants were, they knew that this was a big deal, a big deal. How could they dare to neglect it? Soon all 36 inner elders of the Sky Cloud Martial School showed up. They all had a serious look on their faces. Some attendants who were passing by thought that someone was going to attack the Sky Cloud Martial School. "Yichun, come in with us." The head elder nodded to the attendants, then led Yichun into the palace. The Drifting Cloud Palace was very spacious. It was as spacious as the Floating Cloud Palace. There were 36 seats on both sides of the palace, presumably for the inner elders. "Yichun, I heard that you are going to go out to gain more experience." The first elder asked anxiously. Yichun nodded, "Yes, great elder. Sai, I knew this day would come." The great elder sighed. From the first time he met Yichun, the great elder knew that Yichun was no ordinary person. Yichun's aspirations and ambitions were so great that they were beyond his imagination. However, he never thought that he would make the decision to train. There were different kinds of adventures. For a small adventure, it would only be in the Windy Nation or the few neighboring countries, and would not be too far away. It would take at least a couple of months and at most a year and a half. However, for a big adventure it would be different. The South Rudra region and even the entire True Spirit continent would be included in the adventure. In the hundreds of years of history of the Sky Cloud Martial School, a lot of people had chosen to go out for adventures. However, most of them never came back. No one knew if they were still alive or dead, or if they were still far away from home and did not want to come back. From Yi Chen's expression, the head elder could tell that he was going for a big adventure, and would never come back without making some achievements. In this way, it would mean that he had given up his position as the leader of the Sky Cloud Martial School. The fourth elder was an impatient person. He hurried to say, Yi Chen, staying in the Sky Cloud Martial School is not bad. With your talent, it is very possible for you to become an astral-reaching realm warrior in the future. Our great master is also an astral-reaching realm warrior. I am sure you can do it as well. Yi Chen shook his head. Head elder, fourth elder, don't worry. During the Hidden Dragon rank competitions, I will go directly to the competitions. We can still see each other then. Let's wait for the leader to come first. The head elder was not the fourth elder. He knew that it would be useless to persuade him. Otherwise, Yi Chen would not have learned the sword intent. People who had learned the sword intent would always stick to their words. Once they had made up their mind, no one would be able to change their mind. The 36 inner masters all sat down, while Yi Chen stood in the middle of the palace. Soon the leader of the Sky Cloud Martial School, Luo Xinglia, walked into the palace. He glanced at Yi Chen with a complicated expression, then walked straight to the main seat and sat down. Yi Chen, the adventure is a good thing. I wonder, where do you want to go? Yi Chen cupped his fists and said, the South Rudra region and the True Spirit continent are all within the range of the adventure. I will make a decision according to the situation. Luo Xinglia and everyone else gasped. The South Rudra region was already huge enough, and he still wanted to go out of the South Rudra region, although there was still no sign of it yet. Waving his hand, Luo Xinglia told Yi Chen not to be so formal. He said, you are one of the most talented martial geniuses since the founding of our Sky Cloud Martial School. No one has ever surpassed you. Theoretically, once I reach the astral reaching realm, the leader's position will be yours, and it will not be given to my son Luo Hanshan. Do you know that? Yi Chen thought that the True Spirit continent was just like those Wuxia novels he had read before, where the leader's position would mostly be given to their own descendants or relatives. It would be extremely difficult for outsiders to inherit the position. Even if there were, it would be very rare. However, he was not interested in power. The leader's position of the Yi family and the leader's position of the Sky Cloud Martial School were not his dream. His dream was to travel around this strange world and become a top warrior step by step. Everything else was just a dream, and he would not care about it. Leader, I have decided to go out for the adventure. Su Jing is more than enough for the Sky Cloud Martial School. But of course, if the Sky Cloud Martial School is in trouble, Yi Chen will come back immediately no matter where he is. The other inner masters started to discuss. Someone disagreed. Yi Chen, the outside world is indeed colorful and full of powerful warriors. But you have to know how many people have died in the adventure. I do not want to see a rare martial genius of the Sky Cloud Martial School fall. Master Gao is right. Yi Chen, you have to think twice. Hearing him, Luo Xinglia stared at Yi Chen without blinking. He hoped that Yi Chen would give up on the adventure. As for the small adventure, he did not really care. Chapter 167. I have made up my mind. Yi Chen shook his head slowly. Before this, he had already thought about staying in the Sky Cloud Martial School for a while, at least until the Hidden Dragon rank competition was over. But no matter how he thought about it, he still could not find a reason to stay. Right now, among the young generation of the Windy Nation, he was without a doubt the #1 warrior. Without a goal, staying would only be a waste of time, and it would reduce the chance of him becoming a top warrior. The path of a warrior had always been against the natural order, fighting against time. Countless martial geniuses on the True Spirit continent could not even make the last step before they died, because they thought they had plenty of time when they were young, but when they reached a certain level, they realized that it was never enough. The head elder forced a smile and said to Luo Xinglia, leader, let him go. The path of a powerful warrior is destined to be alone. Head elder. The fourth elder was anxious. He had high hopes for Yi Chen, and always thought that he would be the strongest supporter of the Sky Cloud Martial School. But now he was leaving and no one knew if he would still be alive or not. How could he not be upset? The head elder said, if his goal was not so big, maybe I would persuade him to stay. But do you think he only wants to become an astral-reaching realm warrior? His goal is the whole true spirit continent and even the whole world. Staying in the Windy Nation, a small place like this, would indeed be hard to achieve. As for the path of a powerful warrior, it is a path of life and death. If you are afraid of death, how can you become powerful? Everyone went silent. The head elder was right. If you were afraid of death, you would not be able to become a real powerful warrior. Every real powerful warrior had walked out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Therefore, there was already a generation gap between them and Yi Chan, and it would be impossible for them to reach an agreement. After a long while, Luo Xinglia said, all right, since you have such a mind, the Sky Cloud Martial School should not be a burden to you. You can go out and train. When you have made some achievements, remember to come back and let us know that you are still alive. You don't have to worry about anything else. Yi Chan took a deep breath, bowed and cupped his fists. Thank you, leader and elders. The head elder laughed and said, Yi Chan, training is your personal matter, of course we will not forcefully stop you. Plus, with your talent it is right for you to go out and explore. Who can guarantee that one day, you will not become a powerful warrior who can rule the world? At that time, our Sky Cloud Martial School will have to bask in your glory. Yeah. Since you have made up your mind to train, I will support you. Be careful outside. You only have one life. Think thrice before you act. Make sure nothing goes wrong. Seeing that Yi Chan was still unmoved, all of the inner masters did not have anything else to say. They could only hope that Yi Chan could leave safely and come back safely. As for his achievements, they did not need to worry at all. As long as he did not die, he would definitely reach the astral reaching realm. Leaving the hall, Yi Chan found Luo Hanshan standing outside. I envy you. Now that I've gone out to train, I'm feeling very carefree. As the leader's son, Luo Hanshan knew everything that had happened in the Sky Cloud Martial School. Once he heard the news, he immediately rushed over and waited for Yi Chan outside the hall. Yi Chan grinned and said, actually you can go out to train as well. Luo Hanshan gave a bitter smile and said, of course I have to train, but my training range is the few surrounding countries, which is too large for me to handle. But you and I are different. The Windy Nation no longer has a target for you to surpass. I have many more. Yi Chan didn't say anything. Indeed, before he became the most powerful warrior among the young generation of the Windy Nation, he had never thought about going out and gaining more experience. But after he came out of the Heaven Dream Ancient region, this thought suddenly popped up in his mind and occupied all of his mind. It was time to go, time to go. The two left the drifting cloud palace and passed by the floating cloud palace. Your name is now the first on the ranking jade wall. Before you come back, no one can replace you. Luo Hanshan pointed at the jade wall and said. Yi Chan said. Su Jing can't be underestimated either. Luo Hanshan said, you don't know this, but after you came back from the scorching ancient desert over a month ago, your achievements have already spread across the entire Windy Nation. To be honest, you are the first one who has caused such a sensation in the past 100 years. The younger generation has already regarded you as a legend. Regarded me as a legend? Before this, the most glorious thing that happened in our Windy Nation was when Zhuang Fei broke into the Hidden Dragon ranking and was ranked 68th. But you've defeated all Hidden Dragon ranked martial artists from the other 9 nations, and even injured the multiple mountain martial school's outer head elder with a single sword move. Such an amazing achievement. If it's not a legend, then what is it? While the two were talking, Zhu Mei and Su Jing walked over from a distance. Zhu Mei glanced at Yi Chan, smiled and said, when are we leaving? Yi Chan said, let's go back to the Yi family first. We'll leave the next morning. That's good. The Hidden Dragon ranking competition will start in less than a year and a half. Only clasping Yuan realm martial artists are qualified to compete for the ranking. See you the year after next. Yi Chan nodded. His eyes fell on Su Jing. Su Jing said, remember, don't get killed out there. Yi Chan gave a bitter smile. Couldn't she just say something nice? But this was Su Jing's personality. After separating from the three, Yi Chan went back to his small courtyard and packed his belongings, then immediately walked down the mountain and headed towards the Yi family in the Luo city. If a clasping Yuan realm martial artist ran at full speed, he could cover over 2,000 miles in 2 hours. 10 hours was equivalent to 10 hours in Yi Chen's world. Instead of rushing at full speed, Yichun spent 14 hours to get back to the Yi family. Just like the elders of the Sky Cloud Martial School at first, Xin Yuqing and Yi Tianhao did not agree with Yichun going out to train. For them, the outside world was too big and too dangerous. An early clasping Yuan realm martial artist did not have much power to protect himself, even if Yichun could challenge those with higher cultivation. In the end, under Yichen's unshakable determination, both of them gave in. However, this time Yichun had made the right decision to come back. His mother, Xin Yuqing, was pregnant again, and it might be a boy and a girl, which was undoubtedly a good thing. In the past, Yi Tianhao had thought about having more children, but for some reason he had never been able to do it. He did not expect that he would succeed this time. Regarding this, Yichun thought about it. Before he left, his mother, Xin Yuqing, was pregnant. Everything was so coincidental. Could it be that this time he would have to leave for a long time? 5 years, 10 years, or even longer? Yichun shook his head. Some things could not be changed by human beings. There were too many uncertainties in the training, even he himself could not be sure. The next day, early morning, outside the north gate of the Luo city. China, remember to write me a letter when you have time. From afar, Shen Yuqing waved at Yichun, his eyes filled with tears. Yi Tianhao silently looked at Yichen's back, his eyes also filled with tears. He murmured to himself, "The young eagle has already spread its wings and soared into the sky. Having such a son is enough for me in this life." At this moment, a beam of sunlight fell from the sky, lengthening Yichen's shadow. Yichun pressed the bamboo hat that he had prepared beforehand. Without turning around, he disappeared from Yi Tianhao and Shen Yuqing's sight. Yichen's departure didn't startle too many people. Except for his parents, the leaders of the Sky Cloud Martial School, and Luo Hanshan and his 2 friends, no one else knew about it. Many people thought that Yichun was still in closed-door cultivation in the Sky Cloud Martial School. Perhaps after a long time they would realize that something was wrong. Chapter 168. The moon was hanging high in the sky, and the wind was blowing fiercely. The night in the Great Devil Grassland was always bleak. Within a radius of thousands of miles, there were barely any signs of human life. Instead, there were countless demonic beasts roaring everywhere. This time, Yichen's first stop was the Thousand Thread Nation, which was located in the northeast of the Windy Nation. He would have to cross the Great Devil Grassland to get there, otherwise, he would have to take a long detour. Not far away, a house-sized boulder was blocking the wind. Behind the boulder, there was a flickering bonfire, bringing a sense of security to this bleak night. Wiping the grease off his mouth, Yichun leaned against the boulder and murmured to himself, "Grassland wild boar tastes good. I can even eat it without seasoning." Grassland wild boars were of a very low rank, only rank 1 demonic beasts. In the Great Devil Grassland, they were definitely at the bottom of the food chain, and were the food for most of the other demonic beasts. However, the wild boars were extremely fertile. A female wild boar could give birth to dozens of baby wild boars, and they could even reproduce the next year. Since the ancient times, they had been the largest group of demonic beasts in the Great Devil Grassland. If it weren't for the hunting of humans and demonic beasts, the entire Great Devil Grassland would have been plagued by wild boars. Yichun poked the bonfire with the fire stick in his hand, making it burn even brighter. Yichun sat down with his legs crossed and started his daily training. The first and second stages of the Great Mystery Art were the basics of the basics. Only by building a solid foundation could one start on the third stage. The third stage focused on condensing Zhanqi, and the quality of the Zhanqi would not be any weaker than the Zhanqi trained with a high-rank mortal realm art. After reaching the fourth stage, the quality of the Zhanqi would be improved to the next level. At the fifth stage, the quality of the Zhanqi would be even better than the pure Jun Zhanqi, and its color would gradually turn into a light blue color. As the Zhanqi completed one big cycle after another, there was not much pure Jun Zhanqi left inside Yichen's body. The Great Mystery Zhanqi took up more than 90% of his Zhanqi spiral. When the rest of the pure Jun Zhanqi turns into the Great Mystery Zhanqi, I will be able to reach the sixth stage of the Great Mystery Art. By then, the quality and quantity of the Zhanqi will both be greater than the original pure Jun Zhanqi, and my overall power will be even greater. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Yi-chan increased the speed of his Zhan-qi circulation. Hoo 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 hoo. The strong wind whistled, blowing the grass on the grassland to the ground, unable to stand up straight. The faint sound of footsteps rang out along with the wind. Two scarlet lights slowly approached from afar, gradually approaching Yi-chan's location. Under the dim moonlight, one could see that the scarlet light was the eyes of the demon beast. It was a huge cyan wolf the size of a buffalo. Its fluffy fur was like a burning cyan flame, bouncing in the wind. Its blood-red eyes were emotionless, staring at the bonfire behind the boulder. 4th level demonic beast, blue fire wolf. 100 meters. 60 meters. 30 meters. At this time the blue fire wolf could already see Yi-chan's side profile. Seeing that he was meditating and cultivating, a cruel glint flashed across its eyes. Whoosh! The blue fire wolf lowered its body and leapt up. The next moment, its claws were less than 3 feet away from Yi-chan. If it took one more step, it would be able to tear Yi-chan into pieces and enjoy the delicious flesh and blood. Without opening his eyes, Yi-chan made a fist with his left hand. Without any fancy moves, the blue fire wolf was blasted hundreds of meters away, and its body flipped dozens of times in the air. Boom! Its body fell heavily on the ground, and the blue fire wolf's forehead exploded. Red and white blood flowed all over the ground and soon it stopped breathing. Under the cover of the night, some demonic beasts that were eyeing Yi-chan like tigers whimpered, turned around and ran. That human was too scary. The blue fire wolf, which was definitely one of the best among them, could not even take one punch from him. Its head exploded and it died miserably. The Gale City was the only city on the Devil Prairie. Its area was not any smaller than the biggest city in the northwest, the Forgotten City. It was more than 50 miles in length and width, and had a population of more than 15 million. Among them, 1/3 were migrant workers, who made a living by selling demonic beast materials. Sigh, we lost big this time. We failed to capture the demonic horse, and 5 of our members were killed by the rank 4 demonic beast, the blue fire wolf. Who knew that the demonic horse would run into the territory of the blue fire wolf? We were lucky to make it back. Poor Song Tao, it was his first time hunting with us. Since they are dead, send some money to their families. Especially Song Tao's new wife, give her double the money. Of course. Hearing the size of these warriors, Yi-chan thought to himself, people say that warriors in the Gale City earn money fast, but they also lose their lives fast. From afar, Yi-chan could see the magnificent Gale City. He pressed the edge of his bamboo hat and quickened his pace. Not long after, Yi-chan arrived at the city gate. The soldiers guarding the city were all tall and strong, their temples were bulging, and their eyes were shining with a sharp light, which could make people shiver. Obviously they were Mortal Realm Stage 10 warriors, and the leaders of the soldiers were even early Condensing Reality Realm warriors. If that was all, it would not be a big deal, but with Yi-chan's perception, he could clearly sense that there were clasping Yuan Realm warriors in the blockhouses on the city wall. Such a strong defense, no wonder it could stand in the middle of the Devil Prairie without being attacked by demonic beasts for thousands of years. Yi-chan was shocked. A few captains patrolled the city gate and said loudly, 5 silvers per person, whoever dares to sneak in. Not only will they be fined 10 times the entrance fee, they will also be imprisoned for 10 days. Don't do anything that you will regret. There is no medicine for regret in this world. 5 silvers? So expensive. Yi-chan remembered that the Windy City only needed 50 copper coins, and the Happy City only needed 1 silver. He did not expect that the Gale City actually needed 5 silvers. It was simply unbelievable. However, when he saw that all the people entering the city were martial artists, Yi-chan was relieved. A martial artist could earn more than 50 silvers by killing a rank 1 beast, 300 or 400 silvers by killing a rank 2 beast, and 1 or 2,000 silvers by killing a rank 3 beast. 5 silvers was just a small amount. Taking out a 5 silvers piece from his pocket, Yi-chan entered the Gale City. Captain, is it him? A captain looked at Yi-chan's back, and whispered into the captain's ear. The captain nodded. Although he is wearing a bamboo hat, his body is exactly the same as the one in the portrait. We have killed him before. That man said that he would give us 100,000 gold and 100 low-rank soul stones after this. Then our hard work these days will be worth it. 100 low-rank soul stones you get 30%, and I get 70%. Do you have any objections? How could I have any objections without you, Captain? This task would not be mine. That's good, you send a few punks to keep an eye on him. Don't let him run out of sight. I will go inform the other party now, and get the gold and low-rank soul stones. Okay. Walking on the street, Yi-chun looked up and around. Overall, the Gale City was not as luxurious as the Happy City. The structure of the buildings was mainly solid, looking both magnificent and practical. Of course, not all the buildings were like this. In the distance there were restaurants rising from the ground, 4 to 5 stories high, 5 to 6 stories high, looking majestic, and some places were even inlaid with precious metals. I am tired of eating barbecue every day. Let's go in and sit and take a bath. Feeling relaxed, Yi-chun walked to the nearest luxury restaurant. Sir, how many? The waiter bowed and said respectfully. Yi-chun threw a 10 silver piece to the waiter, and said lightly, just one. Give me a first-class room and prepare hot water. Okay, this way please. The waiter put the money into his pocket, and happily led Yi-chun upstairs. This was a very spacious guest room. There was a living room full of landscape paintings, a comfortable bedroom, and a bathroom for bathing. In the middle of the bathroom was a small pool, filled with hot water, and the steam slowly rose, making everything hazy. Taking off his clothes, Yi-chun jumped into the pool, and immediately let out a comfortable moan. Lying on the back of the pool, Yi-chun said leisurely, "It's so good to be rich." In the other world, although I was a student at a famous university, I was still an orphan. I had to work during the summer and winter holidays, and the money I earned was not even enough for my monthly living expenses. I didn't even dare to have a girlfriend because I was afraid of spending money. But here the gold I have is enough for me to live for a few lifetimes. If I sell my valuable things, I would be richer than the 10 corrupt officials of the Windy Nation combined. Before his soul traveled to this world, Yi-chun was very envious of the martial artists in the martial arts novels. They all drank and ate and spent money like water. They never had to worry about not having enough money, and when they ran out of money they could just go out and do some business, and they could earn more money than an ordinary person could earn in 10 lifetimes. Then they could continue to practice their martial arts. Now his dream had come true, and he was even more carefree than those so-called martial artists, and he was even more powerful than them. He could casually kill a level 5 or level 6 demon beast, and he could earn tens of thousands of silvers. It was okay if he didn't want to kill demon beasts, because the gold he had was enough for him to use for a long time, and the low-rank and mid-rank soul stones were not included. While thinking, Yi-chun closed his eyes and fell into a 90% deep sleep. The remaining 10% of consciousness was hidden deep in his mind, and if someone entered the room, he would be able to sense it immediately. In another private room of a restaurant, a middle-aged man with a scar on his face was sitting on a comfortable leather chair, drinking wine. It was the Purple Sun Martial School's intelligence master, Zhu Liang. Bang bang bang. Someone knocked on the door of the private room. Zhu Liang said with a cold voice, "Come in." The door opened, and the captain of the soldiers walked in with a bow. "The person you want us to pay attention to has arrived in the Gale City, and is currently in the Great Jinhua restaurant. Look, gold and soul stones. Gold and soul stones will be yours, keep watching." "But, didn't you say that you would give it to us once the good guy arrived?" Zhu Liang's eyes were like knives. He glanced at the captain's face. "Are you afraid that I won't give it to you? 100,000 gold and 100 low-rank soul stones are nothing to me. On the other hand, if you let that brat escape, not only will you not get a single cent, I will also take your life." "Yes, yes." The captain of the soldiers was a peak early condensing reality realm warrior, but under Zhu Liang's stare, he was sweating profusely, and his legs were shaking. "All right, you can leave now." Waiting until the captain left, Zhu Liang grinned. "Yi-chun, you didn't expect that we have a spy in the Sky Cloud Martial School, did you? We will know once you leave. Let's see where you can run to this time." You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.